My name is Caleb Domsey, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to find data for your Ruth Chris index research. That is, how to find data for each of the factors you might select in this project. I'm going to show you many more factors than you'll actually need. As a group, you can decide which of these factors are the most important for the case and use the data within them to construct your index. Let's start with per capita beef consumption. I'm going to click the Our World in Data link, take me to a table that shows me the beef consumption across a variety of countries. For any of these countries, I can edit the countries that are in the list to match the ones that are in the case. And that's an easy and quick way to find out the beef consumption per capita in the countries of interest in your case. I can show you how to find the rate of urbanization for any given country. I will need to go country by country for this, so it can be a bit slower, but I can type in urbanization and a country of interest like Spain. I then click Statista Search, and I might just have to scroll down a little bit to find a chart that will show me the urbanization in Spain. So I can see that for 2023, the urbanization in Spain was 81.55%. And I can go country by country through Statista, gathering that data for the countries of interest. The next factor I can show you actually supplies many factors. That is, this single database, Passport, contains many factors you might wish to use for this project. Everything from full service restaurant statistics, that is, restaurants that are full service, meaning it's not fast food. You sit down, there's a hostess, there's a server. It's a much more traditional style of restaurant. But we can also look at travel statistics and more. For many groups, Passport is an excellent tool because it allows you to get a lot of data, and actually there are many factors within this database. I'll start by showing you full service restaurants. I'm going to type full service restaurants and then the phrase in, and then I want to name the country of interest. So I'm going to use Spain as an example again. Here I'm going to click on full service restaurants in Spain, which is underneath the analysis heading. You would think that looking at the statistics over here under the statistics column would be more useful, but in fact, you get many tables for any given country when using the analysis. Not only that, part of this project often involves writing a SWOT analysis on the eventual selected country. And the analysis portion of every report in Passport is an excellent choice and place to start when it comes to writing that SWOT analysis when you've identified the country that you're going to expand into. All right, back to our factors. On the screen right now in table one, it's telling me how many restaurants there are across a variety of categories. So they've even divided the full service restaurants in Spain into all these different categories. And here is where I can look at the North American full service restaurant category. So not only can I find out how many restaurants there are in Spain of a full service variety, but I can actually tell you how many full service restaurants there are that serve North American style food, a perfect match to what we need for the Ruth Chris case. Not only that, I can use that as a percentage of the entire industry to get a sense for the competition and also the preference for North American style food versus all the other types of food one can eat in Spain. I usually skip table two, which is in the thousands of transactions, and I like to show you table three. Another possible factor for you is the sales. So how many millions of euros are spent at North American full service restaurants? All right, so we can see that it's 415.6 million euros out of a possible 30 billion euros being spent on full service restaurants in Spain. So another great factor is to take this 415.6 as a percentage of the total spend. And I get a sense for that preference that people in Spain might have for eating at a place like Ruth's Chris. I'm going to skip I'm not going to skip this one, table four. Here's where I can get a sense for how restaurants have been doing in terms of expansion or contraction with respect to the number of outlets. So I can see that for North American full service restaurants in Spain, they've seen a slight contraction. Over the last 5 years, they've shrunk. There's less of them than there were before. But I can see that the whole industry has actually shrunk by almost 20% in the last 5 years. I can skip transaction growth once again and go to value growth. So looking at the changes in sales over the last 5 years. So North American full service restaurants have seen a sales growth of about 4.4%, while the industry as a whole has seen 6%. So whether you want to use sales growth as a factor or unit growth as a factor, or whether you want to use sales as a percentage of total sales as a factor, or how many restaurants as a percentage of the total number of restaurants in that country. You've got several factors you can choose from when it comes to looking at the preference, the behavior, and the performance of full service restaurants in Spain. There are more factors we can look at in Passport. For example, there is a um, report in here called tourism flows. And with tourism flows, we can think about Ruth's Chris in a different way. Some groups like to think of Ruth's Chris as a restaurant that American tourists would like to eat at. So instead of actually looking at tourism flows in Spain, I could look at tourism flows in the US. And what this will show me is where people in the US are traveling to. So if I'm trying to think about a location for my restaurant, if I want to compare my countries based on how popular they are with American tourists or American travel, because many people also travel for business, I can use the tables in here for that assessment. So here I can see where people are arriving from, right? So I don't need that so much. What I want to look is at the outbound travel. So I'm just going to keep scrolling until I see that I've arrived at the outbound travel. All right, here we go. We're getting close. Here we go. Now we see outbound departures by destination, the number of trips from 2019 to 2024, and this is in thousands. So we can see roughly, 42 million trips to Mexico, 60 million trips to Canada in 2024, and then it's the UK, Italy, Spain, and for almost every country of interest in this case, you're going to be able to look at how many Americans traveled there in the last year. So if you're trying to compare countries based on travel, if you're thinking of the restaurant as a tourist destination, this is an excellent way to go about gathering that. Okay, I know that I'll show you one final factor that you can gather in Passport. For many restaurants, the sale of alcohol is a key contributor to the success of the restaurant. So you can look at something like wine in Spain, and we can see how that particular drink is performing, right? And maybe we want to use that as a proxy for the success that our restaurant might have. Do people like to drink wine in Spain, or do they not? So here we can see when we look at the total volume or the millions of liters sold in wine each year in Spain, we can actually see that there's been a decline year over year in Spain. If we want to, and we can see that that is, a main headline here. However, you might be thinking that, well, this sales of wine is combining wine bought at stores and also wine purchased at restaurants. One of the great things about Passport is that we can go into their data graphics tab and we can actually change the channel between off trade and on trade. On trade is the category that is going to tell us about wine purchased for immediate consumption. So this is wine bought at bars or in restaurants. And here we can get the number of liters of wine being drunk, and we could also look at the current value. So I could look at the current value of wine. In this case, it's showing me in millions of euros. So that would be something you want to make sure that if you are going to use this factor, you convert all the currencies you might find across different countries into a common currency. So this is interesting. This actually changes our data. All the data up to now has made it look like consumption has been decreasing. But when you look at money or revenue for on-trade sales of wine, actually the last 4 years have seen an increase, positive growth in that category. So it's worth digging deeper into the data when you're looking at something like wine consumption to make sure you're getting current value and on-trade sales. All right, those are all the factors that I think are options for you using this great tool, Passport. I'm going to show you another factor now called country statistics on doing business. The doing business data is from the World Bank and it's slightly old. It ended in 2020, but because sometimes for this case, you're really just practicing working with data. If you don't mind using slightly older data, you can use the metrics in here. I'm going to type in the name of a country I'm interested in from select an economy. I'm going to click on Spain. And here I get a doing business score. So every country in here has been given a score between 0 and 100, 100 being the best for doing business, 0 would be uh, not good for doing business. And this score rolls up a bunch of factors like starting a business, dealing with permits, electricity, registering property, getting credit, protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, enforcing contracts, and resolving insolvency. So in a way, they've constructed an index using data that they already have on different countries to look at the attractiveness of doing a business in any given country. So you can look up any other economy you might want and just simply note down the doing business score. There's another great source of an already constructed index, and it's in another tool called Country Watch. Country Watch takes a slightly different look. So instead of what it's like to do business in a country, under country reviews, I can then click country reviews again, and it will load up a default country, usually the United States. I'm going to scroll down because they actually have something called a foreign investment index. So it's slightly different than starting a business, but looking at the attractiveness of a country for investment. And here they've used different information. Here they've used things like economic freedom, EPI, interest rate, GDP per capita, inflation, and unemployment. And for every country you might be interested in for this assignment, they've once again given a score from 0 to 100. And we can just look across any country, 100 being ideal for foreign investment, 0 being not ideal. And you get your scores fairly quickly that you can use in this assignment. Another metric that people like from Country Watch is the taxation. So you can very quickly find typically the corporate income tax rate or the corporate tax rate. So some groups like to use that as a measure for one of their factors, also available here in Country Watch. Continuing this tour of the possible factors is looking at the preference or the availability of American beef in a given country. And for that, we can use the Observatory of Economic Complexity. Because you might find that for any given country, people might consume beef. So a country might rank highly under beef consumption per capita, but you might want to drill down to the level of finding out, do they like to eat American style beef? Because I guess cows and steak from different parts of the world has different flavors to it. And you don't want to open a restaurant where people don't like the flavor of the food you're serving. So I'm going to scroll down past these OEC Pro ads until I see these charts. Here is where I can actually click Explore Visualizations, and this is under the historical data for yearly trade. I'm going to explore those visualizations, and I can look at imports from origin, or I can look at imports by product. So I think I'm going to look at imports by product because this is going to allow me to explore this further. Here it's saying, where does Spain import liquid pumps from? But that's not what I want. I can change the product and I can type in beef. And as I type in beef, it actually shows a whole variety and subcategories. But one of the highest categories here we can pick is either bovine meat or frozen bovine meat. So we have either, frozen or not. So I can pick something like frozen and then click build visualization, and it will show me where it's importing their frozen beef from? We can see that it mostly comes from Europe or South America, with 4% of it coming from the US. So here I can use that 4% as a metric for the amount of US style beef being consumed in a given country. All right, so there I can see that clearly Spain consumes beef, but very little from the United States. So that is where this tool is quite useful. I can show you another one here. Some groups like to know what the annual wage is in a given country, and the OECD has collected that information. If the table doesn't load up, you can always just click table here to load it up. And sometimes the time period is quite big, but we can actually just look at the most recent data available, like 2023, for example, and then the table gets much more reasonable. Here they're giving me all the data in local currencies, but I believe you can also edit that in the table to make things a bit easier for yourself. Um, I think you might be able to pick US dollars converted, and then you get all the same currency regardless of the country. You're able to get the average wage across all the countries you might be interested in for this project. Okay, another one that some people like to know is what the household disposable income is. The OECD has something called the Better Life Index, where for all the countries in the header here, I can just scroll down for any given country. So I could once again look across fairly quickly here and pick a country like Canada, for example. And I could scroll down and right away it shows me what the disposable income per capita is in US dollars. And I can take that data and use it in my index as a factor. I'd say the main disadvantage to this particular tool is that not all the countries that you might be interested in for Ruth's Chris will be listed here. So it's always a chance using this type of disposable income data that you might not have your country listed here. There's another factor that's often popular, which is to find out how many millionaires there are in your country. And there's actually a table in this report that will tell you that. So this is the Credit Suisse Global Wealth Data Book, and there's one published each year. So even if the one in this video seems old, you could always Google for the newest one. I'm going to click Find, and I'm just going to look for table 3-6. That table might change over time, but you get the sense here. What you're looking for is high net worth individuals by country and region. And I could see that for any country I might be interested in here, it's telling me the number of people who have between $1 and $5 million, $5 to $10 million. And when I say millions, it's in US dollars. So all of these are directly comparable. And I can look at how many people have more than $500 million in terms of high net worth. And I can do that for all the countries you might be interested in for this project. So once again, an excellent factor for you to use. The last one I'll show you is about English proficiency, which tries to answer the question around if this is to be a local restaurant, or will the menu need to be translated for local people? What's going to be like to train staff? What's going to be like if it's a tourist destination? Yeah, it helps you answer that question. So they've sort of ranked each country in the world by their proficiency with English, and you can assign this as a score for a factor if you think menu translation or the ability of your local staff to speak English will be important to the people dining at the restaurant. And that is all the factors that we can use. I'm sure there's more out there, but these are some of the most popular ones I've seen over the years. Those are the sources of data for your Roost Crest index research. Happy researching.